What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, and thanks for joining us today here on TaiwanPlus. U.S. President Joe Biden will visit Israel on Wednesday ahead of a possible ground invasion of Gaza. The State Department says this visit will reaffirm Washington's commitment to Israel's right to defend itself. More than 2,800 civilians have been killed in Gaza since Israel launched an aerial bombardment last week in response to a Hamas militant attack in Israel that left hundreds dead. Biden will also meet with the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority.
The President will reaffirm the United States' solidarity with Israel and our ironclad commitment to its security. President Biden will again make clear, as he's done unequivocally since Hamas's slaughter of more than 1,400 people, including at least 30 Americans, that Israel has the right and indeed the duty to defend its people from Hamas and other terrorists and to prevent future attacks. The President will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not benefit Hamas.
World leaders are arriving in Beijing for China's Belt and Road Forum. The two-day meeting marks 10 years since China launched the project to build trade links with the rest of the world. Representatives from over 130 countries are attending. This includes Russian President Vladimir Putin, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and a representative of the Taliban. Ahead of the forum, Putin told Chinese state media that Russian and Chinese foreign policies are aligned.
Мы видим, что кто-то воспринимает ее как попытку Китайской Народной Республики кого-то под себя подмять, но мы не видим этого. Мы видим просто желание к сотрудничеству.
Here in Taiwan, the country's largest weapons maker is hoping to build an underground facility that can make missile components by 2026. This comes as Taiwan is looking to ramp up domestic weapons production following delays in deliveries from the U.S. Jaime Okan reports.
A show of support from Taiwan's largest partner. U.S. officials and think tank members are reaffirming their promise to help Taiwan boost its defense.
It bears repeating. The U.S. commitment to Taiwan is rock solid. It is principled, and it is bipartisan. We stand with our friends and will continue to do so. And we also welcome your continued commitment, President Tsai, to maintaining the status quo.
The U.S. is Taiwan's largest supplier of weapons and military assistance, everything from fighter jets, tanks, and anti-armor missiles. Taiwan's President Taoyuan has continued to thank the U.S. for its long-standing commitment to Taiwan's security.
我们也要感谢拜登政府高度重视我们的国防需求，持续落实对台军售的常态化，来协助台湾强化自我防卫的能力，共同维护区域的和平稳定。
But despite strong support from the U.S., deliveries of weapons to Taiwan have been delayed in recent years. That comes even as neighboring China steps up its military activity around Taiwan, a country it claims as its own territory. Now Taipei is pushing to bolster its own self-defense capabilities and trying to rely less on Washington for military hardware. One example is Taiwan's own missile program, which authorities believe could be a powerful deterrent to Chinese aggression. Taiwan's largest missile producer, the Zhongshan Institute, says it hopes to build a 4-story underground facility to help produce missile parts by 2026. In recent years, Taiwan has specifically pushed to develop and mass-produce 2 kinds of missiles. The first are surface-to-air, which protect the skies above Taiwan against aircraft and other missiles. And the second are anti-ship, which can take out vessels sailing close to the country. This push for cost-effective, precision-guided weapons is all part of a so-called asymmetric strategy.
台湾在国防的投资上面，其实花很多力气在不对称作战上面，去强化我们在精准弹药上面的投资还有建构。所以从这个角度来说，你去首先第一点在防卫上面，你去增加它的这个固体火箭的生产能力，它是有绝对的必要性的。
But Taiwan's push to improve its domestic defense capabilities is just one part of its overall strategy. And with over $20 billion of American-made arms still on the way, the country remains heavily reliant on Washington for weapons and security. But its focus on domestically made weapons shows that Taiwan understands that its security is ultimately in its own hands. Kamashu and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Turning now to local politics, the main opposition Kuomintang has invited the Taiwan's People's Party to discuss a possible joint campaign in a meeting later this week. The KMT and TPP are in talks to join forces against the incumbent Democratic Progressive Party. The DPP's candidate, Lai Ching-te, is currently leading in the polls. Over the weekend, representatives for candidates Taoyuan of the KMT and Cohen's of the TPP met to discuss terms for establishing a joint ticket, though they couldn't reach consensus. The KMT camp says it remains hopeful that the parties can reach a compromise. Meanwhile, Lai has pledged to continue his party's transitional justice efforts. That's if his ruling DPP wins a legislative majority next year. Transitional justice in Taiwan refers to efforts to seek reconciliation and accountability for injustices carried out during the martial law era. Lai made the promise during a meeting with students in Hsinchu. He also said he would continue the housing policies of current President Tsai Ing-wen, promising to build a further 130,000 social housing units.
我是认为用这个方式去推，应该会比蔡英文总统更有利，因为蔡总统都12万户嘛，所以我们未来的8年13万户应该是不会有问题。
Speaking of housing, house prices here in Taiwan increased for the 4th consecutive quarter despite government measures to cool the market. Down in Tainan, prices have increased for 21 consecutive quarters. But the Interior Ministry says rising interest rates and recent law changes have had an impact.
整个房价的涨幅明显看起来是有收敛趋缓的情况，那整个市场的交易的部分的炒作已经获得明显的抑制。
Typhoon Inu caused widespread damage when it swept across Taiwan's southeastern Orchid Island. More than a week after the record-breaking winds and waves, the island's people still face an uphill battle to get back to normal. Rick Glauert reports.
60-year-old Sinam Vorjing sleeps exposed to the elements, but she does not want to leave here. It's where she grew up on the north coast of Taiwan's outlying Orchid Island. Her house was blown away by Typhoon Koinu, which brought wind speeds of more than 200 kilometers an hour. And as she rebuilds, she's now counting on her relatives and neighbors.
完全是靠自己。你如果说我们需要怎么样的帮忙，当然最需要帮忙的就是帮我们盖一个家，因为我们现在没有能力盖家里。
Vorjing is one of just 5,000 people living on Orchid Island, 60 kilometers off Taiwan's southeast coast, where tropical beaches and coral reefs usually make it a popular tourist destination. Most of the residents here are Dao, a seafaring indigenous group that have become accustomed to the remote island's harsh weather. But when Typhoon Koinu ripped through their island, it brought the highest winds ever recorded in Taiwan, sinking boats, destroying homes and businesses, and bringing down power lines. With the help of Taiwan's military, basic necessities like drinking water, electricity, and phone and internet services have now been restored across most of the island. But it's going to take a lot more work to repair the widespread damage to infrastructure and property. That task is made harder by the people here needing to import everything from Taiwan's main island, a 2-hour boat trip away. As winter approaches, the islanders are struggling to find the materials and manpower they need to weatherproof their homes.
很多人在网络上写说有没有水电师傅，有没有修铝门窗的，有没有铁工业者，就是相关的专业的人员可以进来这个岛上。
Taiwan's government has released emergency funds to compensate people affected by the typhoon, and plans to help reconstruct the island's largest harbour and to move electricity cables underground to improve typhoon resilience. But many people here still feel abandoned.
我们希望县政府能够帮我们传递我们的需求给中央，并且除了帮助我们这个岛屿，帮助我们的族人。
Typhoon Koinu has left its mark all over Orchid Island. Its once green rolling hills are now brown. The fierce winds strip the leaves from the trees, leaving hillsides bare. In the villages that dot the coast, the island's residents do what they can with what's at hand. They know that ultimately it will be left up to them to rebuild their island home. Andy Schwer and Rick Glauert on Orchid Island for TaiwanPlus.
A fire has ripped through a paper factory in the city of Taoyuan, causing major damage. There were no injuries, but firefighters needed more than 20 trucks to tackle the blaze. The cause of the fire is still unclear. It's the latest in a string of fires that have hit Taiwanese factories in recent weeks, including at another paper mill last week and at a golf ball manufacturer in late September. That killed 10 people and left over 100 injured. To find out more about what's behind Taiwan's frequent factory fires, John Van Trieste spoke to Ling Qinghong, a fire safety consultant and former official at Taiwan's National Fire Agency.
Why are we seeing so many factories catch fire? Are Taiwan's laws and regulations not good enough, or are they not being enforced properly?
法规的基本的要求应该都已经够了，但是现在是执行面不落实。比方说呢，像我们台湾有在应变的时候，它有一个叫做防火管理制度，首先要求它要写计划，那写完计划再依计划去办相关的训练，因为他不会写嘛，他就写一个范例给大家做参考。那照理讲，你应该是参考这个范例，然后去写属于你工厂需要的计划。结果大家都不是，大家就把范例拿来套用，唯一改的就是名称，就把自己工厂的名称放进去。
Are there other problems you see?
如果我训练的够好，就可以灭掉；如果我训练不够好，这个火就会灭不掉。哦，那这一块其实是缺的，而且是缺的很厉害。
That was John Van Trieste speaking to fire safety consultant Ling Qinghong. Taiwan is experiencing its worst dengue fever outbreak in years, with more than 17,000 cases reported so far. The disease is spread by mosquitoes, but only certain kinds tend to carry it. Jeremy Olivier explains.
Not all mosquitoes are born alike, an important fact for people in Tainan lately. The city in southern Taiwan has been the epicenter of the country's worst outbreak of dengue fever in nearly a decade. The two breeds of mosquito that most commonly carry the virus are the Aedes aegypti, or yellow fever mosquito, and the Aedes albopictus, also known as the Asian tiger mosquito. Both are identified by their distinctive stripe pattern. An especially hot summer and rain and flooding from typhoons have given these insects ample opportunity to multiply. And while they are endemic to Taiwan, the disease they're spreading is not.
那境外一路个案来到台湾以后，因为台湾本身就有埃及斑纹或是白线斑纹这些病媒蚊，那就有可能造成一个本土的一个传播。
How these tiny creatures have been able to create such a huge outbreak of dengue in such a short amount of time has a lot to do with their feeding habits. While the Asian tiger mosquitoes mostly live outside and only bite twice before dying, the yellow fever variety prefers indoor environments and can bite multiple people as they feed. This makes them much bigger spreaders of the disease.
埃及斑纹它的成虫寿命大概至少有31天，所以如果它第一次叮了一个病人，过了1个礼拜之后，它还有将近3个礼拜、4个礼拜可以叮人，每个礼拜叮一次，一次要叮4到6个人，也就是说，在它的一生至少可以传20个人。
The mosquito's eggs are able to withstand up to half a year of dry conditions, and they hatch as soon as they're exposed to water. To make sure the insects can't continue to breed, public health researchers have a few recommendations. First, look for and pour out any standing water. Next, clean the container or wet area. Lastly, scrub it to remove any remaining eggs or larvae. But remember not to dump the water down the sink or storm drain. It's better to do it in soil or on asphalt.
最重要就是民众一定要动起来，只有一个人做是登革热是做不来的，一定要社区动员大家一起做，不管是里长、邻长、志工或者是一些团体，那民众一定要一起来做，才有办法把登革热防治做到最好。
For the most part, dengue fever is not a deadly disease, but for certain vulnerable groups, it can be. The best course of action is to keep from getting bitten by mosquitoes in the first place. And when you go out, try to wear light-colored clothing and put on bug spray. By getting everyone to pitch in and follow this guidance, researchers and officials hope the country can become dengue-free sooner rather than later. John Su and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
That's it for What's Up Taiwan. Stay with us on TaiwanPlus for more news from here and around the world. Finally, relax and enjoy these baby panda twins in South Korea, turning 100 days old and having their names unveiled. I'm Eric Gao. Thanks for joining us.